Hi, Embracing Only podcast family. This is Archita. We are introducing impact moments, actionable insights that highlight the best and powerful learning moments and wisdom from our past episodes of incredible guests. In this highlight reel, you'll hear leadership lessons from a combat veteran, taking action to be anti-racist, mastering workplace negotiations, leveraging your uniqueness for success. We'll take a topic and break it down in a short, snappy episode. So click on the link in the show notes to continue listening to these impact moments with our amazing guests. There was this really interesting LinkedIn post I saw a couple of weeks ago where this female investor was in Spain, and she mentioned that she was listening to pitches from female like a few different founders. The men who had no viable product identified yet, like no product market fit, had actually no revenues either, were asking for close to a few $1 million. And the women who had 5 years of being in market, I think 300,000 or something plus in profit year after year, were asking for $250,000, which is dramatically different, right? So this is where I have a question. You talk a lot about how the pitches need to really stand out for women and especially female entrepreneurs. And you did an episode with Christopher Solich. He mentioned delving into crafting a captivating pitch. And what advice would you give female entrepreneurs of color to make their pitches stand out, especially considering the biases the minute they walk into that investment community and are ready to talk about what they have to share with the world?
It's good that you refer back to that episode, because one thing that I think Christoph said that was maybe an eye-opener to me was, I was like, how do you pitch to an audience that doesn't understand your problem? And I remember when I was trying to do that, I had seen it a bit as a disadvantage and even felt like I had to tell the story. You should always tell the story behind it. Just in general, emotions always make people want to buy or feel more for it, have a better understanding. But he also had said something along the lines of, the beautiful thing about having an audience that doesn't necessarily understand your product is that you're the expert and they can't tell you, oh no, that's not true. So that's a nice thing about it. At the same time, as women, I think a major part of it is coming in with this strong energy of I am the expert, and really coming in and making sure that you're not framing things along the lines of, oh, I don't know. It's okay to say you don't know, but these are my steps to figure it out. And this was also the thing that I found. I forgot which episode I was talking to with it, but it could become a 15-step process instead of a 2-step process for you to get to the end goal of your startup, right? But you as a founder, your job is not to say I have all the answers. Your job is to say, this is what I'm trying to get to, and this is how I'm going to get there. And then you have the numbers, the stats, and the figures to say, these are the people who have this problem, and this is how I can create a profitable business. At the same time, I've sometimes seen with women entrepreneurs, especially those who maybe are working on a niche product or a particular segment, we might be going for the wrong fundraising at that particular time. For me at that time, I think I was doing the wrong thing by going for VC funding for a business that was not going to scale at the multiples of a VC case. And I oftentimes think that people don't fully understand the funding mechanisms behind a startup and what exactly that means for your business. So I would have to say there's a major part of education where sometimes for people coming from a background that didn't necessarily have access to it, you wouldn't understand necessarily. You would feel like, oh, the investors are being biased, which they are. There are certain times they are being very biased, but there's also other times where you just don't have a business that's that case. But if you do have a business that is the case, then it's simply a matter of showing these are my steps to get there. This is how I'm going to do it, and have the facts, the numbers. And so you do a little bit of ethos, pathos, and logos in your speech, right? And the last thing that I would also say is, from my research, what I saw was that there's a very strong difference between promotion-focused questions versus prevention-focused questions. And these are questions that your investors would typically ask you. And oftentimes women are asked questions around prevention-focused. So how do you plan on making sure that your competitors don't take advantage of your business? And then you go into a way of answering your question where it's a bit more defensive, or, well, if this happens, then I would try to do XYZ, right? But it doesn't put you in a position of strength or power. You're basically talking about it from a position of your business getting circumvented by a competitor. Versus typically men would be asked questions where they're more promotion focused questions. What is your plan to take the market in the next 5 years? Well, over the next 5 years, I plan on doing X, Y, Z to get there. You see how the different nature of the questions give you a different nature of your response. So as a woman, you're also now learning certain tricks to how you're going to answer a question. When you're hit with a prevention focused question, try to answer with a promotion focused answer instead. And so it is these little tips and tricks because the biases are there and you're going to be hit with these questions. So now it's a matter of also training yourself, which I know is not necessarily what you want to hear, that you should be learning certain tricks to avoid bias, but at the same time, the bias is there right now. So there are ways to try to mitigate it as much as possible. And I would also say that in addition to the confidence and having the numbers and the facts and the emotions behind it.
Yeah.
That was a long answer.
The reality is, yes, bias exists. And one of our key focuses with our community at the Embracing Only podcast is how do you thrive in spite of it all? Otherwise, you're just surviving. When you're just like, I'm not going to engage here, or this is crazy. You got to thrive in spite all of this. And I love your prompt around if you are given a prevention focused question, moving it to a promotion focused answer puts you into that position of power. And that's also true outside of the startup ecosystem. At work, you're presenting a strat plan, you're presenting a project plan. Because the minute you get into defense, there is no coming out stronger to showcase that I know what I am doing. I am the expert that you mentioned. And I love that reframe that Christoph shared, right? That especially when you're focused on a new topic, you are the expert. So no one can question your expertise. But let's unpack that a little bit, because sure, no one can question your expertise. But I hear a lot of the following, which is I was sitting at a digital demo day in Dusseldorf. And I heard there were a couple of female founders talking about menopause. And there was an app that one of them had created to get home safely. Right? I'm forgetting the name. It was like a ride app, but safety numbers based out of Berlin, actually. And there were men in the audience who were actually some investors. And they were not asking the question from the perspective of, wow, this woman's an expert and she knows where she's taking a business. But instead, they were asking questions to unpack menopause. So do you see like a lot of women that are like women of color in these situations wherein they're spending their time explaining the concept of why this thing is even important, and versus the audience recognizing that, hey, they are the expert. So let's move forward from this space to look at it as a business opportunity. And they're not here to teach you about menopause.
Find balance between the two, I would say. Because on one hand, when you have an audience, especially an audience that you need something from, who needs to understand it to be able to give you something, now for me, it becomes a question of, are they asking to understand so that they're more inclined to help, or are they just asking to question your expertise on the topic? And my thing is, storytelling is so key in your pitch, right? You don't have that much time to pitch. So when you're pitching, try to tell the story. And I think Christoph said this really well, and I've tried this myself. Try to tell the story from a perspective that your audience would understand. Maybe it's their wife. Maybe it's their daughter. Maybe it's a parallel illness that a man may face that has similar symptoms. But try to tell it from a perspective of that so they can empathize with the problem more and truly understand how debilitating that can be. Whether you break that down into numbers, saying on average, women are missing XYZ amount of hours at work because of the impacts of this, whatever it is. And then you say that's essentially the same amount as 4 days out of office per month. I don't know, something along those lines, right? But really breaking it down to an emotional level, but then also being able to quantify it. Now, at the same time, you can't win everybody. And this is where I always say you need to lean into your power and you need to lean into your position of strength. You are the expert, and don't allow yourself to be pushed down by someone who does not understand the topic. And this is also why it's a great filter for you to figure out who you do and you don't want to work with. Because if this person is constantly questioning your expertise and is not fully trusting you, you don't want that person as an investor. Stop trying to win them over. There comes to a point where you have to be a bit arrogant and you're just like, I'm not entertaining this anymore. And it's a great way for you to filter through who you really want to work with and who is better left on the sideline. Because anyway, your investor is basically like a partner for marriage. You're stuck with them. And if they already suck from the beginning, they're going to get worse during that period of time that you're building your company. So if you can already filter that out from the very beginning, leave them to the side. Because there's also investors who invest in companies who have absolutely no idea what the company does, but love the founder. You want people who believe in you as a founder, someone who's going to really encourage you. They may not necessarily understand what you're building, but they trust you. So that's why I really say it's a fine balance between the two of understanding where the questioning is coming from. But at the same time, you want people who are your champions. Your investors should be your champions. They should be the ones to help you open your next doors, get you to that next level. They're not the ones building the company for you. You're doing that. They need to trust that you can do it and that you're the expert. And so that's why I always keep saying you really need to stand in your power, because it's your company at the day. It's your vision. Lean into that. Filter out the naysayers and the others. We don't need them.
Yes, 100%. And this is applicable across the board. I'm thinking about my own journey as a solopreneur now with the clients I choose to work with. And then or my time in the corporate as well. It's the mentors we choose to tap to be like, hey, will you champion for me? Sometimes we're trying to win over people that are not worth our time and effort winning over because they don't see your brilliance. They don't see what impact you can drive. And here we're investing energy upon energy in trying to convince somebody that is never going to get it. So move on and find your right community that will really help move you forward.